evening. Hi, everyone. My name is Denise Quayle, and I'm the Ridgefield Youth Commission's chairperson and managing director at Kids in Crisis. And I want to welcome you tonight to the Youth Commission and Kids in Crisis webinar on empowering minds, finding mental health resources for young people in our own community. Tonight's webinar will be recorded and put on the Town of Ridgefield's website under the Youth Commission, and it'll also be on the Kids in Crisis website for future viewing or if you would like to share it. For all those registered, you will receive a copy of the final slide, which is the resources we have, and that'll be at the end of our discussion. I'm now going to turn our webinar over to Will Nipsel, one of our Youth Commission members. Go ahead, Will.
Hi, everyone. I'm Will Nispel. I am in 10th grade at RHS, and I'm part of the Ridgefield Youth Commission. And now we'll have the other students introduce themselves. So I'll start off with Krisha.
Hi, my name is Krisha Bhattacharjee. I'm in 10th grade at the Ridgefield High School.
Now Akshay.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Akshay, and I am in 11th grade at Ridgefield High School.
Now let's go to VJ.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us. My name is VJ Pertab, and I'm an 11th grader at Ridgefield High School.
And then let's finish off with Julia.
Hi, I'm Julia Nispel. I'm in 12th grade at Ridgefield High School.
I want to cut Mommy. Mommy, for me.
Okay, so now let's introduce our panelists. We'll start off with Brittany Williams.
Hello, my name is Brittany Williams, and I work for Kids in Crisis. I am the Teen Talk Counselor at Ridgefield High School. I'm a licensed master social worker, and my position within the school is to support students and provide them that confidential support students who may be experiencing anxiety, depression, peer conflict, academic pressure, thinking about harming themselves or others, family conflict, and anything else. I'm just there to be a support to them.
Awesome. Nate, do you want to go next?
Sure. My name's Nathan Carpenter. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I'm the clinical director at Ridgefield Youth Service Bureau. My colleague and I, Doug Burrell, who's also a licensed marriage and family therapist, are 2 of 4 clinicians that we have right now. Ridgefield Youth Service Bureau is a very small organization compared to other youth service bureaus in Connecticut. And we focus solely on counseling and therapy for individuals and families. A lot of people think they see the youth and they think we only work with young people, but we do work with entire families. And we're also located at 66 Prospect Street in the Town Hall Annex, right next to Yanity Gym.
Great. Let's go to Officer Kate Williams next.
Hey there, I'm Officer Williams. I'm the school resource officer at Ridgefield High School. Basically, I act as the liaison between the police department and the school, the high school primarily. So I'm there for general safety reasons, but also a resource for families and students who may need any kind of law enforcement service in the school. And I work in conjunction with counseling and other mental health services at school if needed.
Okay. And then Officer Tom Dardis.
Hey, good evening. My name is Tom Dardis. I'm the youth detective at Ridgefield Police Department. I handle all cases involving youth offenders as well as youthful victims. And I also handle adult cases as well.
Great. Thank you guys so much. And now let's get into the questions. So we'll start off with Krisha asking a question.
Yes, my question is for Officer Dardis, and this is a 3-part question. So, what is the Juvenile Review Board? Who is on it, and why does it exist?
Okay, thanks for the questions there. I'll start by just explaining a little bit about the Juvenile Review Board, or the JRB. It's basically a community-based diversion program for youths that may otherwise be referred to the juvenile court for minor violations of the law. In other words, a juvenile who's committed a relatively minor offense, or they'll be referred to the JRB in lieu of being arrested or appearing before a JV court. Although there's no specific Connecticut statute that establishes or maintains JRB, how they're supposed to work. The Youth Services Bureau has been, let me rewind that. The JRB has fallen under the Youth Services Bureau in the state of Connecticut for about 50 years now. There's no direct law that maintains how a JRB should be run or established. Each community is able to establish and operate their program in a manner that meets the needs for that community, including the ability to amend the program as each community's needs change. One of the features of the JRB model that sets it apart from other programs designed to, designed to assist youths and families. And one of the reasons for its success, quite frankly, is that each JRB program is unique to the community it serves. While it's critical to the continued success of the JRB model that such flexibility in the establishment and operation of JRBs is permitted, it's recognized that some consistency should exist throughout the state in terms of how the JRBs structurally operate. What I mean by this is that we can use that leeway in terms of there's no state mandate saying you must do ABC 1, 2, 3 in every single JRB to our advantage in our community. So by the virtue of us being able to tailor it to our specific community, then we can tailor our needs for that youth. The second question you had asked was who's on it. Luckily, we have a standing member with us, Nathan Carpenter, who's been an absolute integral part of the JRB. But backing up a little bit, a JRB should consist of a cross-section of members of the community who have some experience in matters of child development, adolescent behavior, family dynamics, youth development, and/or juvenile laws and procedures, right? So members should be committed to providing dedicated and consistent service to the JRB while effectively contributing to the process in a respectful and appropriate manner. The JRB makeup should also represent the community in which they serve in regards to race, ethnicity, and culture as well. It's very important. So that being said, generally, JRB members should include your Youth Services Bureau staff. We have Nathan here. School administrators, guidance counselors, and/or social workers, law enforcement officers, juvenile court personnel, Department of Children and Families personnel, local service providers, such as mental health agencies or other agencies serving the youth, members of the faith-based community, local business person or people, and other appropriate community members. Our specific board is basically that last thing that I just read off there. We have an attorney, there's someone who just happens to be an attorney. She's also on the police commission board. I'm on the board. We have members of the school on the board. We have some clergy on the board. So it's basically just wrapped up into what I had just said. And lastly, why does it exist? The biggest reason, in my opinion, is to treat and deal with each youthful offender as a member of the community, by the community in which they live in, right? So in lieu of sending the youth to JV court, our community, through working with the parents, school, and the youth themselves, will decide what's the best course of action for that individual. Another reason, quite frankly, is to just clear up some of the immense caseload on the juvenile justice and court system. Keeping these cases out of the courts and off the JV docket frees up a tremendous amount of time for more serious cases for the prosecutors and judges. Obviously, for us, we lean more towards the first part, which is just basically dealing with someone that might be presenting a problem, a criminal problem now, and saying, hey, it's our community. This person lives in our community. We have a vested interest in our community. And let's see what course of action is best for this youngster to bring them in through that problem, make them a more valuable part of the community.
Thanks so much for that. Nate, do you have anything to add as a member?
I've participated in a few JRBs. I've been a therapist for 20 years, and just like Detective Dardis said, each JRB has its own flavor depending on the town it's in. So I've seen a lot of kids benefit from this, especially Instead of going to the courts, they come to our board and they're given recommendations. It's not that they get off any easier. In some cases, they have to do a little bit more work, but I've seen a lot of families and individuals that have taken advantage of it, and they're doing great. So
That's great. Okay, then I think we can move on to our next question. Our next question is going to be asked by Akshay.
So my next question is for Mr. Carpenter. So first of all, thank you for joining us. So what services does the Youth Services Bureau provide to young people and families? And where are you located other than the location that you mentioned earlier?
Good question. We, like I said, we're in the Town Hall Annex on the first floor of the Town Hall Annex. And what we do, compared to other youth service bureaus, we don't have a lot of programming. Our main focus is on counseling and family therapy, which we've seen quite a increase in terms of requests for. We do have 4 therapists, myself and Doug Burrell, who I mentioned, and 2 female therapists. And we provide individual, usually short-term therapy. In some cases, we do have clients that have stayed with us for almost a year, but we try to focus on short-term, solution-focused individual and family therapy.
Okay.
Oh, so I'll also add that Doug Burrell, my colleague, also runs parent circles in the schools for different developmental ages. So he's been doing that for, I believe, for at least 15 years since he's been at the agency.
Okay. Then let's move on. I think VJ has the next question.
Sorry about that. This next question is for Ms. Williams and for Officer Williams. Ridgefield High School has both the school resource officer and the Teen Talk program. How are these two different, and who should reach out to them?
I can start. So say for the Teen Talk program, so reaching out to the Teen Talk program, which would be myself in Ridgefield High School, reaching out to me would be for any kind of mental health support. So if anyone can reach out to me, so that could be a parent looking for support for their child, a student, someone reaching out on behalf of a friend, teachers, school counselors, any school staff, absolutely anyone can reach out to me on behalf of a student within the school. That's if they have any concern for their mental health and their well-being, and I'm there to be a support to them. And then I often work with Officer Williams, and I sometimes work with her during mental health crises. And if we ever feel like a student is in imminent danger of harming themselves, then we will work together in those instances. Also, I just wanted to mention that we do have Teen Talk counselors in our middle school, the 2 middle schools in Ridgefield High School as well, or Ridgefield in the middle schools. So that would be Scotch Ridge and East Ridge.
And then just to piggyback off of her, so typically if in the school setting, if a student or a group of students comes down to the counseling department and they feel that they need emergency services, like determining whether a student or multiple students need to go to the hospital for further evaluation, I kind of facilitate that process. But sometimes it's the reverse. So sometimes a student will come down and before they go to counseling, they may have been involved in a situation or have a friend who was involved in a situation that they're not sure if something criminal took place or not. So before they've even gone to the counseling department, they may approach me first. And I can have a conversation with them or them with their parents, or deans or any kind of admin where there's a concern. And then sometimes it's determined that there actually is not law enforcement needed, and then I can refer them back to counseling. So sometimes it starts in counseling and winds up with me. Sometimes it starts with me and winds up with counseling, but we can kind of go back and forth and we work together and communicate pretty well within the school to see what's needed or not together.
Sounds like important roles. Okay, thank you. And we will go on to Krisha again.
Yes, this question is for anyone, so whoever would like to go first. The question is, how can we reduce the stigma surrounding mental illness and reaching out for help?
Jump in. So I think one way it's just by like being conscious of our language. So using respectful language. So I think one way is like avoiding words that have a negative association. So something like saying crazy or committed suicide. So more of saying like people with mental illness or died of suicide. So those are just ways of really using respectful speech. I think that's a way of getting away from the stigma, and just refrain from using mental health conditions as
Mommy, who's
adjectives.
that?
Does anybody else want to jump in?
I'll add just that I've noticed in the last throughout my career that the stigma around mental health has kind of lightened up a little bit. You know, I have a lot of people that um, reach out and they're very proud of therapy. So I've seen a change. I think it's still there. I think the idea that it's people perceive it as a weakness, I think that's changed quite a bit. I think, I hope that trend continues. I also will add.
I would say too, in the school system, I've just noticed now that I'm implanted there and not so much at the police department, but I see a lot more on the school side. Kids in school are really good about coming down with concerns to the admin. They're very good about being like, hey, my friend's a little bit off, but I'm worried about them. And it's nice to see that instead of kind of the hands-off approach of like, years ago where it's like, no, they're fine or it's not my business. And I feel like kids nowadays like err a little bit more on the side of caution with their concerns, which is good. And if it's looked into and it's nothing, that's great. But sometimes it does yield something, and I give credit to the kids that come forward with their concerns in a caring way.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Okay. So let's move on. I think Julia asked the next question.
So, kind of jumping off of what Officer Williams just talked about with people coming to professionals when they feel that their friend needs help, we were wondering for Nate Carpenter, how do we know when someone does need professional help? And then once you know that someone does, how can we help a friend who's afraid to seek help?
Good question. First I'll state that, I'll put this in the context of this is a friend or an acquaintance of someone. I think it's important to trust your instinct. If you feel something is wrong, I would definitely say something and reach out. Some of the more detailed observations I think would be if you notice someone's persistent emotional distress, if they're constantly anxious, sad, overwhelmed, and it doesn't improve over time. And again, that's another area where that could be a week or 2 weeks. I think if you see that kind of behavior, that should raise some eyebrows. In terms of behavior, people that withdraw from social activities, neglect their responsibilities, their grades start going down, and that's unusual for them. And they lose interest in things that they once enjoyed. If they like playing basketball and they no longer participate in basketball, I think that's another sign. And substance abuse. I think that if you have friends that are experimenting with alcohol, drugs, as a coping mechanism, excessively, I think that's another big sign. And I also include vaping and marijuana and vaping nicotine. I think that people have different opinions on these, but if this is a friend and you're seeing someone start this kind of behavior, I think that's another big sign. And last, I'll this might seem obvious, but self-harm and suicidal thoughts, someone expressing hopelessness, making statements about wanting to disappear or actually engaging in self-harm, I think that requires an immediate reaction. If you feel that a friend is in immediate danger, I wouldn't hesitate to reach out to crisis services, a trusted adult, a police officer, a school counselor. Even if you're not in school, call 911, call 211. 988 is a suicide hotline. And there's also home, which you text 741741, which is for people that want to report something over a text. So there's quite a few options in that regard. And the second part of your question, what was the second part? It was
The
how to
second,
help.
yeah, it was if a friend is too afraid to seek help, how do you help them?
And that could be difficult too. If I always, you kind of practice what a therapist does, listen to them without interrupting and don't minimize their emotions. Definitely validate their feelings, acknowledge what they're going through is real. And I think even I have some clients, offer help with the process. Anyone who contacts me at the Youth Service Bureau, I welcome into a therapy session. If I get the proper releases signed and parents are okay with it, I'll have a friend come in with a friend if that makes it more comfortable for them to come in and talk about what's going on. And I guess lastly, I would just encourage small steps. If someone doesn't feel like they need full therapy, I definitely want them reaching out to a trusted mentor, teacher, family member, and again, a police officer. If they're more comfortable, more familiar with someone in their life, I definitely want them to reach out.
Thank you for sharing. I think that's such an important thing to learn about because it could really happen to anybody, and anybody can have to use those skills. Okay, so then we can move on to VJ.
So this next question is for anybody who'd like to add something. Is there any additional insight that anyone would like to add regarding how young people can access help in Ridgefield?
I'll jump in real quick. I mean, as a greater whole in law enforcement, we can't be everywhere at once, so to speak, as police officers in town. So we rely on the community to report things to us. So just to kind of mirror that and more specifically in the school setting would be the same. You can have a student in class, or I can see students in the student center or at football games, but we otherwise rely on friends and teammates and things to let us know if they think something is going on. So I would just encourage that kind of if you see something, say something, to jump into that. I think we're going to touch on it, but we have the Say Something app that's been introduced to the school community as well, which is an anonymous reporting system that the kids can utilize, which is helpful as well. So I would just encourage kids to just, if they don't want to come down to the counseling department or to the deans, to utilize that app and just let us know if they see something that's off.
And if I could just follow up. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. That's all.
Thanks for your input. If I could just follow up on that. You talked about the Say Something anonymous reporting system. Now, when it was first introduced at my school, the kids were kind of mocking it. They didn't really take it seriously. So I guess my question for you is, how do you make sure kids just don't become desensitized to these kinds of things? And how do you make sure they actually take it seriously and, give it the respect it needs?
So I would say it's not unlike any kind of reporting system. I mean, there's plenty of people that will utilize 911 for reasons that are not genuine, like not invited to a party, so want to kind of call to create issues with friends or just reporting falsities. Like that happens amongst adults just as much as it does kids. So there's always going to be an element of that, but the way that the reporting works is that, you probably see the QR codes around the school and the students were briefed about how it would work. So um, there's an app in which you can go on and, you don't have to give your name, but it would be generally speaking, there's like a drop down as to what the concern is. And it's pretty easy to weed out if something is just silly versus something that's like a little bit more specific. It's the same with us as police officers. Like we get a report of something and you can pretty much debunk something relatively quickly as to whether or not it's a serious report or not. Um, so with that being said, obviously we're not going to, in the school setting, they're not going to be overly punitive with not using it in a serious manner, but I've maybe only see one or two instances where it was kind of a spoof. It seems like kids are relatively receptive to using it for the purpose that it's there for. So other than that, just more of an encouragement of like it's not a joke and it's just to be used seriously, and it really hasn't been an issue that I've seen. So I get all the reports from the high school on my phone. They come in through text message to my phone. So if it were an issue, I would have no issue saying we've had some serious issues with it, and I haven't seen any real problems with it so far.
All right, thanks so much for your input. That's a really great idea. Is there anything else anybody would like to add?
If not, we can go on to, I think Krisha has another question.
Yes, this is touching back to professional help. This is for anyone. What are the resources in our schools and in town you would refer young people to? So anybody can go.
Nate's smiling.
Well,
I'll say the Bureau.
Yeah, I was going to say, everyone's welcome to call the Youth Service Bureau for not just crisis intervention. We get quite a few people that call that are in a situation where we'll switch it over to a more appropriate level of care if it's outside of what we do. I think the main component of it is finding someone that referral, wherever you are. I think I compliment the school system. The entire school system in Ridgefield is wonderful, and they have very strong, caring clinical staff and teachers and employees. So I think while a student's in school, there's a lot of opportunity to get help if they need it. I also compliment Mike Flynn's program at the Girls and Boys Club. These are places that are there with professionals that are looking out, and if anybody mentions something, they're gonna find that person's services, as well as churches and clergy. I think that there's a lot of help in terms of if somebody just needs counseling or if they need someone to talk to. I think there's a lot of services for that. I wish there was more mental health based services similar to what we're doing. Doug Burrell and I are in the process of growing our agency, so we're trying to be able to take on more referrals since we have seen an increase in the last, I'd say, 2 years, significant increase for talk therapy. So I think there's quite a difference between crisis counseling and therapy. I think that there's appropriate referrals. I'll work with psychiatrists and hospitals. And when someone is released from a hospital or an inpatient stay, I'll provide the talk therapy, and they might have other doctors that are in their care. So there's a lot of different levels of care. And I think the majority of referrals we get are for people that are having struggles and they need someone to talk to either individually or they need to figure something out with their family. I think that makes us somewhat unique, although there are a lot of other therapists in the town of Ridgefield. Ridgefield Youth Service Bureau does offer sliding scale and need blind services. So that means if someone comes in and they're economically disadvantaged, that's not going to get in the way of them meeting with a clinician or talking to someone, which again, it does make us somewhat unique. But there are other professionals that will help out that I rely on all through the town.
I'd also say Kids in Crisis as well. So although we have Teen Talk within the school, we aren't just a person, we're a program. So we do work 24/7. So I'm in school every day, but then we're also a program that we are available 24/7. So we're a crisis hotline, and we also have our outreach program. So we are available all of the time to anyone in town.
And I'll jump in with Brittany. I apologize because I always include kids in crisis because they're in the school systems. But when I first started here 4 years ago, the one of the first contacts I made was a kids in crisis counselor. And since then, we receive a lot of referrals and do a lot of interaction. We have a monthly phone call with kids in crisis. So wonderful program and very professional. And I get a lot of positive feedback from young people that work with the Teen Talk counselors.
Thank you. Yeah, and we also have like a respite care as well. So that's another program that families have the ability to utilize as well.
Great to hear about all these resources students can access if they ever need help. So now we can go on to Akshay.
Thank you. So this is a question for everyone on the panel, but Ms. Williams, we can start with you and then just let everyone else share out. So what are some effective techniques for managing stress on a daily basis that you would all recommend?
Yeah, awesome. Okay. So I probably have a couple, but I will give one. So something that I often hear a lot of the students that I work with at school is just saying that they never feel like they have enough time. Time is always a stressor for them. So something that I like to tell them is one, just trying to figure out routine and a reliable schedule to help them manage that time. So routine can just is something that's really good to fall back on and can help with those stressful times when life just gives you those curveballs. It's just really good to have that routine. So for homework, for instance, is like really you guys and within the community get a lot of homework. And so that can be really stressful, and doing that before bed is stressful. So I try to get them to develop a routine that helps them with this and kind of gives them a sense of control over their life and adding that self-care piece within that too. So saying like, you don't have that time, but giving yourself 5 to 30 minutes to do something for yourself. And they always say, well, I don't have 5 to 30 minutes, and what can I do for myself in 5 to 30 minutes? But there's a lot of things you can do in 5 to 30 minutes for yourself to put in that routine. So it's, reading, if you enjoy reading a chapter of your book, maybe making a delicious snack for yourself and just taking the time to sit and enjoy it. It's talking to a friend on the phone for a little bit. It's even if you enjoy scrolling on a social media site, it's giving yourself only that 5 or 30 minutes and putting that timer on it, and that's your time, and then going back to what you need to do. But just finding that schedule and that little bit of self-care to put into that routine to kind of alleviate that stress.
Yeah, that makes sense. It seems so simple, but when you think about it, it would reduce stress or whatever. Anybody else have any other thoughts on that?
I'll jump in. And this isn't just for youth. I include adults in this response for reducing stress. I want everyone to take breaks from social media and get out on a walk, do something physical. Sometimes you need to pull yourself out of a space and physical activity. Even if it's as simple as going on a walk or taking a stroll or just finding a peaceful place to be in your own mind. I think that's important. I think a lot of the research that's coming out now on social media use, it has exploded. And that's, I have a lot of parents come in and they're complaining about their son or their daughter, and their social media use. But with more investigation, I find out that the parents have even more than their kids. So it's something that is new, and it's something that is very helpful. You know, it's not, I want people to avoid it completely. I think it's a necessity, and it's also an entertainment. But to be careful about that. You know, sometimes I think access to social media can cause stress and can cause isolation. So I want people to be aware of that. If they feel that, you know, there are parts of this that require an individual to make a movement and get out of the situation, not just reaching out for help, but you know, relying on themselves to understand where they're at and when they need a break.
I'm sure Officer Kate and Officer Tom both experience stress as police officers. I'm sure that's pretty stressful. Do you have any specific stress coping techniques you use?
Go ahead, Kate, you go first.
I think you're muted.
Yeah,
I'll
sorry,
go.
I was muted. Same, just to piggyback off of that, like anything physical kind of comes to mind, like just being outside, going to the gym, going for a run, going for a paddle on the paddle board, like trying to carve out the time to do that. It's very easy to just take idle time and scroll on your phone. We're all guilty of it. Tom as well, I'm sure. So definitely just being outside, being with friends, kind of having more of those organic communications with people, actually having conversation with people that's in person, connecting and not just being through a phone is kind of how I decompress and ground myself, I would say, just on a personal level.
I would say for myself, again, being outside, as Kate said, for me personally, it would be exercising, whether it's indoors or outdoors. I like riding motorcycles outside and off-road, playing instruments, reading. All of those things will get me away from a screen, or a TV or whatever it might be, computer, laptop, my phone, social media as a whole, get me outside, breathing fresh air, and will help me reduce stress. Works for me.
So it seems like what I'm picking up here is just like anything that makes you happy is that thing that you can practice any day to reduce stress. Is kind of to summarize what everybody was saying. Okay, and then let's move on to Julia.
So, this is a question for everyone, but maybe we can start with Nate Carpenter. So the question is, what are some misconceptions about mental health?
Thank you. And just so everybody knows, I just got a text. They canceled school tomorrow. I don't know if anyone else saw that come
I
up.
saw that like as soon as we started. I was gonna say something like that.
No way!
there you go.
Already they canceled it?
They canceled it. So there's a stress relief right there. So take some time
A
off
snow
tomorrow.
day, a snow day.
Snow day. Back to your question, Julia, about misconceptions about mental health. I think I've had people that have different viewpoints on diagnosing and overall mental health issues. They feel that they're not real illnesses. In reality, mental health conditions are medical conditions, just like diabetes or heart disease. And I think that's something that you know some people can't understand because it's not physical. It's something that someone is going through. But that's a misconception I hear often. Another one again is you know only weak people struggle with mental health issues. You know this mental health has nothing to do with strength or weakness. It can affect anybody, you know, regardless of background or personality or level of resilience. I think, you know, that misconception, you know, keeps a lot of people from reaching out for help. So I think anything that does that is detrimental for people. Another thing is I have people that will often give the advice of you can just snap out of it, think positive. You know, I think sometimes these statements can be painful for someone who's going through it because for them it's something that they can't snap out of, and they do, they do need help, and they do need to talk to a professional. And I've also had I've had people tell me that children can't have mental health issues. Um, and a lot of mental health disorders can actually start in childhood and adolescence, and early intervention is a big help for young people, especially to develop healthy coping strategies. Um, so that's just a few that I've experienced. There are quite a few.
Thank you for sharing. Does anybody else have anything else they want to add to that? Any others they've heard? If not, I think we can move on. Does anybody else want to go back to any other questions, add anything else they want to say something? Just really any thoughts they want to share.
Kate, I'm not sure if everyone knows the extent of the SRO program in the schools, that it's not just the high school.
So there are three of us. I'm in the high school. I also cover Ridgefield Academy and St. Mary's, just generally speaking about my position. The other two are one in each middle school, and then they cover their own respective middle schools depending on the area of town. So 3 elementary schools per middle school SRO, and they're a little bit more on like a floating rotation where I'm always at the high school. So again, primary is just being present in the school if something is to happen emergency wise. We're there for medical calls. We're there just to be there so that if there is a need to call the police, that we're already familiar with the school population, that if there's something that's ongoing where the police need to be called, that I'm there every day or the other officers are there every day. So we know the kids in school, we know what's going on. It doesn't need to be re-explained to a different officer the next day and then the next day. And it's just, we're kind of in our own little island as how it was described to me when I took the position. Like the high school is your island and that's your community. There's 1,700 people in the high school, so it's between staff and students. So it's kind of like its own little town in a way. So like know your town, know your people, have relationships with them and make them feel like they can trust you, and genuinely, of course, and not make them feel like, you know what I mean, but get to know them and be there for them. So the other officers do the same. They float a little bit more. So the middle school SROs, they do the DARE program with the elementary school kids. I didn't go through DARE when I was younger, but Ridgefield has had that program for a long time. So I noticed when the middle school SROs float over to, because the food's better at the high school, and they come to visit, a lot of kids, they recognize those officers from their elementary school DARE classes and the middle school DARE classes, and they feel comfortable with them. You can feel that the relationship is there. So it's nice to kind of see it come full circle. And then to bring it full circle, then I actually will pick kids, juniors and seniors, to go back as DARE role models. So I'll send them back into the elementary schools to the SROs in the elementary schools when they teach. And then the younger kids kind of look up to them, and it's like, these are kids that went through the program. It's really nice, actually. So we work well together. Ridgefield's used to us being in the schools. A lot of other communities in the area, it's like a relatively new program, but we were one of we may have even been the first in the state to have an SRO in the school. It was post Columbine, not post Sandy Hook, which is when it really took off. So the community's used to us being there, which is nice. So it's not like a groundbreaking thing. And I do think that it's received very well by a lot of parents and kids. So, but like I said, we're just there. Anything that comes up, sometimes our involvement is law enforcement, criminally related, and sometimes it's just as a resource, as another trusted adult. We're like, I'm here if you need anything, let me know. 90% of the time, I just let the deans or the counselors know, like, if anything escalates to the point of me, like, you know where to find me, I'm here, let me know. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, but it's nice to just be integrated in with the kids, and they know they can approach me if needed, and that, you know, I'm familiar with the staff as well. So it's a very casual, kind of more comfortable than just kind of calling the PD and not really being familiar with the officer that you're getting and not having that relationship.
Thank you.
I'll jump in on, I think the SRO officers in not just Kate, but the middle schools as well. A lot of students will sometimes talk to the officer in school, and they'll reach out to me, and I will contact the parents of someone. So, I don't want people to have as many options as possible. I think people have the misconception that if they approach an officer, if they say anything to the officer, that's going to turn into something criminal or something. But most of the time, I would say it becomes very helpful, and it's a connection to providing, going back to that question about how do you get your friend help, how do you get someone services. I think it starts there because the SRO officer is going to be able to listen to you. They're going to be able to make the assessment, and then they're going to be able to reach out to the appropriate person and have the appropriate reaction. So, I can't say enough about the program. It's great.
I agree. And I'm going to do a little shout out to the Teen Barn as a resource too, because of kind of what Brittany was saying in terms of finding some downtime. We have a really programmed life with academics and sports and, commitments of all the extracurricular activities kids are involved in. The Teen Barn is just a hangout spot, and having an after school opportunity to hang and just be with your friends or sit around and play a board game or do whatever. That is the barn, and the hours are on the barn door for anybody that wants to go over there and use that. I think the after school opportunities through the club, I think Mike Flynn runs an incredible program at the Boys and Girls Club. And there are great resources there with the Keystone Torch Club and Gem Club for kids to feel connected to something. And again, the more trusted adults in our lives, the better, right? So to make those connections in the after school opportunities at the club or at the barn, the rec center. I mean, we're blessed in town to have some of these things that could be great outlets for self-care, as you mentioned, Brittany.
Does any other student have any other question that they wanted to ask before we, I think, start to wrap up?
Oh, I had one other question. So, going back to what Officer Williams said about like it escalating to where you need like the services provided by the school. If you're not sure, like if you see somebody exhibiting like warning signs that they might hurt themselves or they might hurt somebody else, or like if you just hear something that might sound a little concerning and you're not sure if it's less serious or more serious than it really is, what are some steps you can take to kind of help manage that, or distinguish between what's serious and what isn't?
I mean, in the school setting or even just generally, I would say if you're not sure, it's always better to ask than not, whether that be going to a parent if it's on a weekend or going to a trusted adult. In the school setting, I would love so much more for someone to come to me and just say, hey, my friend's a little bit off, and describe it to me and just feel that they can get that off their chest to someone who is a little bit more in tune with like, okay, there's some intervention that's needed here, instead of just harboring that inside and having to struggle with whether or not to say something. No one's ever going to get in trouble for coming forward with something. And I would just always encourage to do that. So if more or less, if you're not sure, just ask. If it's a question of not being sure, you need to ask. Period. That would be my rule of thumb with anything.
That makes sense. Okay. Does anybody else have any other questions?
And I'll just comment on what Officer Williams just said in terms of We always talk about how difficult it is to try to figure that out. Does my friend or does this person need help? Should I reach out? I stress, I'm kind of on the other side of that, after someone has reached out for help. But I've had a lot of cases that have had a single point of contact where somebody said something, they went to an officer, they went to a teacher, kids in crisis, and they shared information that help somebody get services that most likely save their lives or help them develop better mental health conditions in terms of where they were at the time. So I'm more familiar with the other side, after somebody reaches out. But again, I stress it as well. If you're feeling that way, trust yourself. If you have, I call it your blink. If your blink tells you something's not right, I know this person, they're not acting the way they usually act. Saying something isn't going to cause anybody any harm. It's just going to get them a little bit more attention, and people are going to be able to assess that. So I know that can be difficult, especially for younger people, to make that call. But definitely reach out if you ever feel that way.
I would agree. And I think back to the Say Something app at school, it's the app, or it's even just on the main Ridgefield High School page, or I think on the middle school pages, all the pages, you can just go onto your main school page and you just don't have to put your name or anything. You can just write whatever you are concerned about, and it just goes right to administrators, or even if it's a high level concern, it goes right to, would go to Officer Williams or whoever, it goes to the right person. So I'd suggest just always just putting it in there. If you don't feel comfortable going to a trusted adult, you can put it in there and it gets to the right person.
I have a question as well. So with regards to the Say Something app, so is that automatically connected to the school, or is it just connected to any resource in general that could be used for the situation that you're reporting?
So the Say Something app, it's monitored by the company that runs it, the Sandy Hook Promise. So it's monitored by 24/7 by like a call center. So if, for example, if you scan that QR code and you're like, I have concerns of any like bullying, say, not just low level, it doesn't need to be necessarily someone is about to harm themselves, but just you go on there with a concern for anything. A live operator will answer you. And depending on how the dialogue goes in hours of the day and things like that, whatever kind of response that those people with the Sandy Hook Promise, they're trained as well. So they're trained to say, okay, this person's speaking of self-harm, or this is kind of more of a school issue, just like I do or Brittany does. Like there's kind of, they know how to filter those, what's being reported. So if it's something that needs immediate attention, they will contact the police department directly, whether it be during the school day, after hours, middle of the night, whatever the case may be. And then the correspondence will go to school admin, myself, the superintendent, things like that, just so that the school is looped into it if it's a school issue. But if it needs immediate attention, it's not going to be, no one's going to see this until 7 in the morning. So why do it? Any time of the day it's monitored. So, um, and then we work as a team. So like we have it's on our personal phones too. So it's like it's coming up on a text on my phone. And then typically shortly thereafter, it's like a group chat between me and the admin, like, hey, I got this one, doesn't need immediate attention or needs immediate attention. And then it's very collaborative. So we're all looking out for everyone. It's not something that just goes by the wayside that nobody sees. It's given a great level of care and attention. So you can rest assured that there's many people that are looking out for the kids, and even if it's on a smaller scale or something more serious.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone for participating. I'd like to remind the audience that we have a recording of this webinar that will be on the Kids in Crisis website. And right now, here are some resources that you can access. You can take a screenshot if you'd like, but they will also be emailed to anybody that registered. And thank you everybody for attending, and thank you to all the panelists and students.